to say Tooney didn't do a nice job of the first half against Cleveland. It's just he's a left guard for a reason. I think you get worse at left guard and you get average left tackle play when you move Tooney to left tackle. Now, average left tackle play is all they need from DJ Humphries, but I want average left tackle play from Humphries if he's healthy enough to play next week, and I want my all-pro playing left guard. That's when they're at their best, I believe, but they got to get the group together, and so far we haven't been able to see it other than, 3.5 quarters before, more than 3.5 quarters when DJ Humphries got hurt in that Chargers game. But this game, to me, tomorrow is a defensive battle. Don't you guys agree? This is a Texans team. I just mentioned what they've done defensively. 4th-ranked defense, number 6 against the pass. The Chiefs are the number 5 overall defense. We just saw Kansas City finally get all these takeaways. Now, I don't think they're going to suddenly just have turnover after turnover every single week. But this is a Chiefs defense that has put together now 3 games where they've allowed fewer than 20 points. And we all know 7 points against Cleveland. I think Spags has this defense moving now. Charles Omenihu, a big part of it. And for all the talk that we've had this week about, oh my gosh, how are the Chiefs going to handle Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson? And it's true. That's one of the biggest questions of the game. How about how is C.J. Stroud going to handle the Chiefs pass rush, which is starting to get going? Whether it's Omenihu, Karlaftis, who just had 2 sacks, Chris Jones, we always know is a headache. Even if the sack number's not there, he's causing problems. This is from Fantasy Stats Hub. C.J. Stroud is 31st out of 32 qualifying quarterbacks this year in one of the metrics, DVOA, against the blitz. And we all know Spags likes the blitz. They haven't always been able to get home this year, but it's been better the last couple weeks because Charles Omenihu is back in the fold. Last year, it's amazing how different. This is why the Texans aren't as dangerous, I think, as a year ago. Last year, C.J. Stroud was like a top 5 quarterback against the blitz. And we know he had a historical rookie record-setting season. It's like the polar opposite this year for him. A lot of it is they have a bad offensive line in Houston. But he was top 5 against the blitz last year. I just told you he's 31st out of 32 quarterbacks that qualify. So there is something to be had there for the Chiefs defense. As much as we want to key in on how the Chiefs going to hold up offensively, I want to see, can the Texans hold up? I don't think they can. I think the Chiefs will get after C.J. Stroud tomorrow.
Yeah, with that, I think that, given how the last couple weeks have been, to your point, with the offensive line struggles that they've had, you've got Charles Omenihu coming in, and he's given new life to the defensive line. George Karlaftis has been much better. I wonder what not necessarily what the strategy is going to be, but would you dare, like, say Charles Omenihu is having a day, or George Karlaftis is having a day, do you dare not double team Chris Jones to try to address if the other guys are having impactful days? That's what makes them such a much better defensive line, is if you can not only have Chris Jones going, because you always know what you're going to get from him, but if George Karlaftis can get going, if Charles Omenihu is putting pressure on the quarterback, you're making the Texans have to make a decision on keeping an extra guy in the block, which leaves less weapons outside where your coverage can take advantage of it. Yeah, they could put themselves in a great position for success given the struggles that Houston has had and also the way that the defensive line has upped the ante over the last 2 games. We'll talk more about this Texans team. We're going to go to Houston coming up around 11:30 or so today. We'll talk with somebody that does sports radio, our sister station, Sports Radio 610, down in Houston, get their perspective on what they see from the Chiefs, but more importantly, what's kind of gone wrong for the Texans this year after high hopes. Look, I had the Texans in an AFC title game against Kansas City this season. I guess it could still happen, but that's how high I was on the Texans, like a lot of people. A lot of people thought C.J. Stroud was going to win MVP this year. That has just not been the case. It's not the same daunting Texans team. I believe they're kind of an average, slightly above average football team, one that's good enough to win in a division like the AFC South, but they're in that same category. I think when Cody and I were talking about this yesterday, I agreed. The Chargers-Broncos type of category. We'll talk about the Chargers-Broncos game from last night and just how dangerous those teams are. Plus, Drew continues, I think, to talk himself into a miracle happening with Cincinnati. We'll get to that in 15 minutes or so. Oh, you were feeling good today. There's a better chance today. There's a better chance. It went up from 5% to like 9%. That's right. Somebody had to lose last night. It's just the right team lost, I think. So we'll get to last night, including the free kick that happened. But let's talk college football, because you alluded to it when I said Bink's going to join us later on in the show. I know you guys are fired up for it, and so am I. This is about to be an epic sports weekend. It's honestly perfect. Heading into a holiday week and all of this, we get the college football playoff. It all gets going tonight.
in South Bend. It's Indiana. It's Notre Dame. Looks like there's snow on the ground and maybe going to snow during the game. I saw some videos this morning of, cars basically lining up, what we would normally see for an Arrowhead tailgate. That kind of thing's happening in South Bend. It's going to be a really cool scene. It's the first game of the new expanded college football playoff. It's the first time we're going to see an on-campus game of this magnitude. So it's awesome. I'm very, very excited. Then, of course, tomorrow we get 3 college football playoff games, SMU and Penn State, Clemson and Texas, and then the big one Saturday night, Tennessee and Ohio State. I mean, Saturday is incredible. I hate that there's a little overlap because the Chiefs will play at noon, and at the same time you've got the Penn State SMU game, and so there's some overlap there, and there's been some articles written this week about how the NFL was trying to negotiate with college football to not have the overlap, but they agreed to not have an NFL game on Saturday night. That way the Tennessee-Ohio State game is standalone. So there's some gamesmanship, if you will, or at least some discussions about how to kind of navigate that from both sides. But the game that I think most people are looking forward to is the Tennessee-Ohio State game tomorrow night. But tonight, I mean, if you believe in the underdog, if you believe in a school that's just usually not there, then you're pulling for Indiana tonight, right? But you and I were talking off there. I think both you and I have in our bracket pool or whatever that everybody does, I'd have Notre Dame going on a run here. I have Notre Dame actually getting all the way to the national title game, so therefore winning tonight. But I wouldn't hate being wrong if it meant Indiana winning, because I will always root for a school that typically is never, ever in this kind of conversation to win a national championship in football. And Indiana definitely is the surprise of all surprises this year.
Well, and Rob Collins and I were talking after he was done with Fesco and Dusty, and he goes, I hate Notre Dame. Everybody who's not, like, even though we picked Notre Dame, I think it would kind of be nice to see Notre Dame lose again. I think a lot of
losses that Northern Illinois game.
I know a lot of people are anti Notre Dame, but in regards to how they've played this year, everybody wants to point that out. Notre Dame I think they're just better than Indiana. To your point, I also have Notre Dame going to the national title. We actually agree on not only the national title, but who's going to win the national title.
We don't agree very often, Drew, but we agree on this.
When it comes to college football, yeah, there's times that we are butting heads a little bit, but yes, we agree on that. I think that this one's really interesting. It could be really good, or it could also be very bad. Like Notre Dame could just put it on Indiana really bad. I think Tennessee Ohio State's interesting because that one, along with the Texas game in a way, the report is there's a rumor out there that the game is in Columbus.
It is,
mind you.
Yeah.
There is a rumor going around that a lot of the resale tickets have gone to Tennessee Vols fans, and they could like almost take over Ohio State. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying.
What does it hold? 100,000 at the
about
horseshoe?
100,000.
They're talking take over. So you think there's going to be?
They're talking like 30 or 40K potentially in terms of Vol fans. That would be crazy.
I mean, I'll be stunned. 40. You know how many? I think Tennessee could have 15,000.
There might be a lot of orange in there apparently.
There could be 15, and the orange will stand out when it's all red, and all of a sudden you have pockets of red or of orange. Maybe there's 15,000 Tennessee fans. You think there's going to be 40,000 Tennessee fans at Ohio State tomorrow night?
Based on what they've said, it sounds like the Tennessee Vols fans are going to show up, and they're going to show up in numbers. There's no. I wouldn't be surprised.
That's embarrassing if that happens.
I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a healthy batch of Tennessee fans. Well Rob Breton, the producer of The Drive, says he thinks it's rigged, or he thinks that he thinks it was a boycott from Ohio State fans. They're not buying tickets because they want Ohio State to lose because they want Ryan Day out, which I think is ludicrous because you're in the playoff. You have a shot to win the national title. Why? It doesn't matter whether you like the coach or not. You should want to win the game.
Sure, but I mean that's embarrassing. If I just don't. I'll be the first to admit if I was wrong. I just don't think there's 40,000 Tennessee fans tomorrow night. That would be crazy,
high,
man. That I know it doesn't sound like a ton compared
to
a
60-40 split basically.
At their home. This isn't a neutral site game. This is in Columbus, Ohio. I'm not buying it one bit. I'll tell you this though, that game, as great as I think it could be, the more intriguing thing for I think the casual fan is what happens with Ryan Day. Like there's the side plot to this. You mentioned him in regards to their fan base, but what happens if they get upset at home by Tennessee? And what the latest spread on that one is Ohio State's a 7.5-point favorite at FanDuel right now against the Volunteers. If Ryan Day loses at home in the opening round of the college football playoff after just losing to Michigan, he's toast.
Gone.
But there was, I think, who was it? Was it Andy Staples, maybe, who covers college football? I think that's who it was this week. He was suggesting that Ohio State would never actually fire him. That would be one of those where, like, he ends up finding an opportunity somewhere else. And it's kind of one of those where, no, he just left on his own. Although I don't know why you would do that. Make them pay you to make, you know what I mean? Like make them pay you if they fire you.
You're at Ohio State.
But there's the ego, right? You don't want to say you got fired by Ohio State. So maybe that's what happens. But if he loses tonight, he's not coaching Ohio State next year, right? Isn't that pretty obvious?
I think if they win and then they lose to Oregon again, I think he's out. I think for him to save his job, he has to make the semifinal. In order for him to be the coach next year, I think
they would have to play Oregon if they won tomorrow night.
They'd have to beat Oregon.
And that's why Oregon.
Otherwise, I think he's gone.
That goes back to our conversation when the bracket first came out, which is that like Oregon's path is brutal compared to some of these other teams. The fact that, yes, they get the bye, and I will always take the bye. I don't care what anybody says in any sport. Give me the fewest amount of games I have to play to win a title. That's why, I mean, the bye week in the NFL matters for health, but also I only need to win 2 games to get to a Super Bowl. In the college football playoff, I only would have to win 2 games to get to the national title game versus 3. I get the path matters, of course, but man, I'll always take the fewest games possible to go win a title.
Yeah, I think that to that point, especially if you're Ohio State, because Ohio State, for this year, I know they lost to Michigan. They've been, I think, the second best team in college football this year from a consistency basis. I know they haven't been ranked like that, but if you were to say before they played Michigan, if it were Ohio State and Georgia, I'm taking Ohio State. Ohio State's been that good. I get why fans are tired of them. That's why I think even if they lose to Oregon,
he's one of the most unlikable coaches in all of college football.
Let's say they lose to Oregon and it's another close one. Oregon kicks a game-winning field goal. I still think he's gone. Like I think
you think if.
I think Ohio
if he doesn't
State
win
fans,
a title, he's gone, basically.
I think Ohio State fans want him. I think he has a shot if they make it to the semifinal. If they don't, he has no chance. I think he's gone. Which is weird because the same conversation almost came up with Jim Harbaugh, where for years he couldn't beat Ohio State, but he would go 10-2 every year. So theoretically, you think this guy's going 10-2 every year. Why would you fire him? But because he's losing to the rival. Ohio State is in the same boat. Ryan Day's record is incredible. But he hasn't beaten Michigan in the last 3 years now. They've lost lost 3 games in a row now. I think, but he's not an alum, so I think they had more patience. Michigan did with Jim Harbaugh, where now Ohio State's been dominant in that rivalry for so long. If they don't make it to the semifinal, plus they lost to Michigan again, I think he's out, even though his record is so good.
Yeah, that's like the subplot of this entire college football playoff that I kind of love. Ryan Day is not a likable person, just plain and simple at all. So, and you talk to any Ohio State fan too. I see a few people texting and they claim they're Buckeye fans as well. They're just someone just texted it, as a matter of fact, said we're so done with them as a Buckeyes fan. I fire Ryan Day even if they win the national title as well. There's a lot of Buckeye fans that I think feel that way. But the same thing could be said in that SMU Penn State game. While the story with SMU prior was just about what happens if they would have won versus lost, and ultimately they lost to Clemson. They still got in because they were competitive. If they would have got blown out, I still think the committee leaves SMU out. They didn't. Now SMU goes to Happy Valley, where tickets are like dirt cheap for that game.
Like $35 or
$35,
$40 now to get in.
That's all it is. That's another head coach, James Franklin, that great record, can't win the big games either. He's one that's interesting to follow too.
If they lost to SMU, that might be something that actually spurs them to fire him. I don't think they do.
They're 8.5-point favorites against SMU.
I think Penn State gets to the semifinal and will play Notre Dame.
I won't watch that game that much. That's going to be on an hour before the Chiefs game starts, so I'll watch that the first hour. But then it's going to be on a majority of the Chiefs game. So
of course,
hopefully,
right.
I mean, and there's a reason why they put the SMU Penn State game in that time slot. It's not expected to be the best of the the opening weekend games that we're going to experience. We'll talk more college football throughout the show. Huge weekend, first college football playoff with the expanded field, the campus sites. Jay Binkley going to join us later on in the show to talk about it as well. Up next, though, let's get back into the NFL. The Chargers-Broncos. It was a great Thursday night game, including one thing that hasn't happened in, 70-some-odd years or 50-some-odd years. We'll get to that and how dangerous either of those teams could be.
Cody and Gold, brought to you by Heartland Men's Health, the leader in men's sexual health. Thousands of men have been successfully treated for low T, ED, and more, all with discretion and compassion. Make your appointment at heartlandmenshealth.com. Follow the station on Instagram for ticket giveaways and behind the